17 years it took for that Tottenham Hotspur's curse to be broken. The now newly ex-manager Ange Postecoglou was the man who broke it. How does he get a thank you in return? Well, owner Daniel Levy has decided that Ange is the wrong manager to take charge of Tottenham Hotspurs for a third season in a row. There's a new winning team here for sure. Transfers are needed, but a brand spanking new winning culture that has been needed for a long while now for this North London side. Ange has finally seemingly adopted one, but was it unfair to sack him? And Thomas Frank, reportedly the favourite to take the baton off the Australian coach right now. Is he even the right choice to take Tottenham to this next needed level? As one viewer in the last video commented, saying, "To dare is to dream." Why didn't Tottenham dare? Or have they dared enough for that dream to become true? Well, let's get some reaction to all of this now from sports editor and Tottenham fan Andrew White. Good evening, Andrew. How are you, mate?
Good evening. I'm well. How are you?
Yeah, really good. Thanks, mate. Thanks so much for coming on the channel. So a couple of days ago now, I posted a video just reacting on the sacking, talking about it from both kind of sides of the coin. More on the side of that Ange should have stayed. And just going to shoot off with the obvious question in the room. Was it right for Tottenham to sack Ange?
For me personally, no. And I'll sort of deep dive into why. Because I don't want there to be too much revisionism on Ange as well. Because throughout the season, did I want him to go? A lot of the time, yes, truthfully. Like I did. Like the league form, it wasn't good enough. We did finish 17th in the league. And for me, for a long time this season, my belief was if we get a new manager in, maybe we can win the Europa League. With Ange, we won't because of that. At the time, I thought there was a bit of a failure to adapt tactically, which we didn't really show until Frankfurt away. But, from that and having been wrong, and then he's gone and won the Europa League, for me, 100% the wrong decision to sack him. Maybe slightly based on emotion. Obviously, now I had that feeling of winning, and I went down to the trophy parade. So I'm living in Newcastle. Moved up here to study, and I stayed here. So I was on like a 5 a.m. train down to the parade. Spent like obviously hours and hours there. I got to Tottenham at like 11 in the morning, and the parade finished at 8. And having met so many people on that day, and having those celebrations and seeing what it means to everyone and the club, and then thinking, Ange is the man responsible for that. Of course, not solely responsible. Obviously, there's the players, there's the backroom staff, there's everything else. But having done that, and our saying is, to dare is to do. I think Ange did. He epitomised that in the end. He put our league form aside to prioritise the trophy, which, as I say, like week per week was frustrating at the time. But then having felt that reward, and most importantly, the fact that I think the players were so publicly outspoken about wanting him to stay, and that they felt there had been a new culture that had been adopted, and basically that this was a foundation to build on rather than something to tear apart. I completely changed my mind and hold my hands up and apologise to Ange Postecoglou. Having won that final, I changed my mind, and I think that he earned this summer, and I'd have preferred to have seen him back to a couple of signings this summer.
Yeah, no, I think a lot of it, a lot of fans like yourself, Tottenham fans, the emotions linked with it, and that's why it's so hard to kind of not have much hindsight on it right now. But I do find it very crazy approach that he had of just gambling it all on that one final, because if it didn't go his way, if it didn't go Tottenham's way, he's it's going to be the next day he's getting the sack. And I do kind of with the owner Daniel Levy, Ange has created so much momentum with this team and everything, and the Europa League performances were so at an exceptional level compared to the Premier League ones. You could and people do say, well, it's only Bodo Glint and what have you, but you can only face who's in front of you and whatever. And Bodo Glint have deservedly got there. They knocked out I forget who it was, but it was a top Serie A side, I think, weren't it? So
Do the beat Roma and
Roma,
Lazio.
yeah, exactly. So not just one but two, and it just goes to show really. But I think does Levy kind of lack that kind of soul as a football owner with realizing the emotion what these fans have. I think the start of the season, people are looking at what the club's kind of going for in terms of being a business side of it. Business activities are happening more than the football activities, and is there a sense of he's kind of still lacking that kind of football ownership model, and certainly lacking that emotion, and should he have really kind of looked around that trophy parade and realised something special was happening here, and went by emotion rather than perhaps all eyes on that league form and only that league form?
Yeah, I think it's really tough because obviously, as you say, like the way that I look at it, the way that other Tottenham fans look at it is a different way to the way Daniel Levy will. At the end of the day, for him, it's a business. He's not a Tottenham fan as much as he can claim that he is. He's a
Yeah.
Tottenham fan by virtue of being employed by Joe Lewis originally, and obviously being at the club for 20 years. But he's not grown up. Like for me, it's obviously like family ties.
Mm.
Like my dad and granddad and stuff that get you into the club, and he hasn't had that growing up. There was a really interesting clip, and I'll try and find it for you when we finish recording. But it's when the trophy parade is ongoing and the players are celebrating and like the celebrating with Ange and stuff. This was in the ground though on the Sunday rather than on the Friday parade,
Hmm.
just around in Tottenham, and the camera cuts to Levy and like he's looking in nothing but pure disdain. Like it was almost as if.
I think I remember
Um,
this. Yeah.
yeah, genuinely almost as if the way that the club's gone about it to me is that they almost expected us to go into the final and lose, and they'd already made their mind up like we're gonna sack Ange. And then when we won, they've almost been like, oh God, well actually now we've got a decision to make, which to me just kind of shows how poor their ownership is because we knew for weeks, right, from the minute we qualified for that final, there was only two outcomes. You've either won the final and you're in the Champions League. Realistically, by that point, we were already either going to finish 16th or 17th,
Mm.
maybe 15th, but there was nothing really above that. Um, or obviously we've lost and we have none of it and we finished 17th. So in my mind, there was only like two options that were going to happen. So the decision should have been made either way before the final, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
For a week, there was only two possible outcomes. So the fact that it's been two full weeks after that final that it took to make the decision, I think it reflects poorly on them. I think it's unfair on Ange, the fact that he was just left in the dark for so long. If that decision had been made straight away, like after the trophy parade, or after our final game when obviously we lost 4-1 to Brighton, like it would be harsh, but at least like there wasn't this like element of purgatory, and the club could have probably already got a manager in and started looking at targets. Whereas you look at like since the final. Man United straight away basically came out in support of Amorim and said
Mm.
that this is our manager for next season, at least to start next season.
Yeah.
But we do expect higher standards next year.
And rightly so. Yeah.
Yeah, correctly. And you look since then, they've already got Cunha through the door, and Buemo,
Hmm.
obviously looks like it could happen. Gyökeres, seemingly nobody else wants him, so I feel like he's probably going to end up at Manchester United this summer as well. So I think you're right. Obviously, like Levy, he's not a fan.
Hmm.
So which I also do get. I do understand on the flip side, they've got to look at it from a revenue perspective of if they stuck with Ange and did buy players for him in the summer and the league form for say the first 5 to 10 games was the same as what it's been this season, then maybe it's already too far of a gap next season to kind of make up and qualify for Europe. So for them, they're looking at it from obviously a revenue perspective. And we did only accumulate 78 points in his last 66 Premier League games, which is
Mm.
obviously relegation form pretty much.
Yeah.
So, like, as I say, like, it's a complicated issue. I think it's almost one of them where no matter which way you argue it, you can be right. But for me, like, obviously, as a fan, I'm not an accountant. Like the club's day-to-day revenue has nothing to do with me. Like football's about winning, and he gave us
Yeah.
that for the first time in 17 years. So for me, I'd have liked to have seen him backed, and basically the club have pretty much said, you know what, this is a foundation to build on, and given that dressing room that unity as well, like that's it's given them trust. Whereas like the message almost to me now that we've sent out to the players is almost, finishing top six or top four is more important than winning a trophy. And I also think that's just a message that can
That's
also settle the dressing room.
Yeah, it's an unhealthy motto itself. Obviously, that yeah, that they're the basics of the expectation, but it's kind of like Ange had a bit of like a hint of realism and just said, look, I'm going to be honest, this is like one of the hungriest and competitive Premier League seasons we've ever seen. He's ever seen. Like just being a fan of football, anyone knows that, which Ange is, and maybe the route was possibly just to let's just kind of set our rails out onto this Europa League competition. This club's dying out for a trophy, because it's all still a project. Ange can come in, and as much as Almarim's still a project, obviously early days still. As much as Arne Slot's still a project, of course the league title's there, but players are going to go from the club days, so that's going to be the test of the Arne Slot project. And as much as I mean, your rivals Arteta, that's still a project itself. And there's questions obviously being there. That's a whole other story. But Ange is still a project itself. So the Europa League title being the first thing he's achieved in his second season is great, and there's more to come. And it does feel like Ange hasn't really read your own club's kind of motto and statement itself, to dare is to dream, and whereas Ange has, and that emotionless kind of the decision might be emotionless. And I mean, with emotion being away from it with myself, because I'm not a fan of the club, I do think, and we'll get onto this now, but I do think the replacement is key for how much we can kind of criticise or not criticise Daniel Levy. And I do wonder now, with all our eyes sat on Thomas Frank to be the lead and favourite to replace the manager, whether that's a winning manager or not. I mean, he got Brentford up to the Premier League, sustained them in England's top division since 2019. He's failed. I kind of think he's failed to get Brentford up to that next level, to get the club into Europe. Kind of had chances now to do that without a doubt. You look at Forest, who've kind of came in a bit shorter, and they've just seemingly done it in style. And it kind of makes you think, is he able to elevate Tottenham to more? What's your opinion on all that?
It's a tough question, and what I would say is, I think Thomas Frank has done an amazing job at
Mm,
Brentford. As you say, like he stabilised a Premier League club where, in reality, I think when they first came up, a lot of people, we all thought this isn't a team that should be in the Premier League.
yeah,
In terms of a bit of snobbery, to be honest, in the way that people also do it with Bournemouth and even Brighton when they first came into the league. But what I would say is a key point in terms of, maybe why Brentford haven't, gone to quite the levels of Europe is, um, they have this season they had the second lowest wage bill in the whole Premier League. Only Ipswich had lower, and every other season before that, Brentford have had the lowest wage bill in the league, and I feel like that's probably something that's attracted Levy to Thomas Frank is the ability that he's worked without a big budget, which
mm,
again, as a fan, is frustrating because we do kind of want to see Enoch invest more of their own money into the club, but realistically, I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. It's already
mm.
been the reports that this summer we need to sell to buy. Looks like the club are kind of actively trying to ship Son to Saudi Arabia because they think they can get a significant fee. And there'll probably be other players. I think Romero will probably leave now that Ange has gone.
Couple of big misses there.
So, yeah,
Yeah,
100%. And so I feel like they've probably looked at a manager who's done a lot with very little. But you're right about that question mark about whether he can do it at Tottenham, because it's almost like when we hired Nuno. Obviously when he left Wolves and we hired Nuno, and that didn't go to plan. And obviously since
Mm.
then he's done an amazing job at Nottingham Forest, and fair play to him. But Tottenham naturally is another level of pressure compared to Forest when he first took over Forest, and like Wolves, and the same with Thomas Frank now with Brentford. Like Tottenham is more pressure than what you're going to have at Brentford. In terms of it, he'll have to deal with more egos.
Yeah,
um
yeah,
this pretty much said it himself in an interview, I think last year, when he was linked maybe with Chelsea or a different job, before Maresca got it. And
yep.
he pretty much said that he thinks Thomas Frank is ready for the next level, but the thing that's going to be tougher for him is that at Brentford there's no egos, whereas when he makes that step up, that there will be. So, but I like Thomas Frank as a manager. I think he's a great coach, and even though, as I say, like I'd probably rather have seen Ange backed, just again for the message it sends to the players, for the message it sends to the outside, even for players coming in of, like we're gonna build on this, and we want to win more. But I would say to any Tottenham fans listening, or just to like, I've seen a lot of people putting Thomas Frank down. Like he's only 8 years younger than Ange, and he's never won anything, and this, like, comparing win percentages and stuff like that. But if it is to be Thomas Frank, and it looks like it is, I just ask, Tottenham fans, like, we need to do our job. We need to back the team, right? Like, we need
Mm.
to support Thomas Frank, like whether we like the decision or not. He's going to be the Tottenham manager, and it's going to be a tough job. And I think the key thing, well, definitely a key thing, will be, when we play our games in our stadium next year, people do need to be, behind the team. So if it is Thomas Frank, like, I hope people just get behind him, and direct any frustration in the decision at Daniel Levy, at the ownership, as opposed to Thomas Frank, because
Yeah,
at the end of the day, he's just a good coach who's naturally making, a big step up in his career.
yeah. No, no, no. Yeah, he completely is. Yeah, I mean, what he's done at Brentford is wonders. And like you say, you don't really associate Brentford as a Premier League side, but he's got them to an established level now, which is amazing. With the financial kind of side of it, obviously, like you said, the club is having to sell to buy this season. How much? Of course, the backing is there. You've said that already, but does the fact of this kind of release clause of having to pay 9 to 10 million to get Thomas Frank out of Brentford, does that worry you in any sense? Does it? I guess my
Um,
question is it even a more bigger gamble in that kind of
I
sense?
suppose at a board level, I suppose it is, yeah, because obviously
Yeah,
that, I guess they had to pay, Ange 6 million, I think, is the
yeah,
payoff, but 2 million's maybe the bonus from the Europa League. So say 4 million plus nine, that's 13 million essentially, in a way.
yeah,
Take that risk on Thomas Frank. So obviously, at board level, like, it's a huge risk, because if it does go wrong, the same way fans are kind of angry now, like, it's probably going to intensify even worse. And if reports are to be believed, then all sources that seem to be reliable that have said it, is that the players really are not happy about it. They're not happy
yeah,
with that it's gone. They're not happy with the way it's being handled. And I think that, again, that is a key thing. Like I mentioned earlier, the fact that it's took 2 weeks, the fact that Ange was left in the dark, the fact that players have probably been left in the dark, and based on the players' reactions, I don't even think the players have been consulted in the decision.
mm,
Um, because when Conte got sacked, not a single player wrote a goodbye message, and that was kind of pretty telling at the time, I
yeah,
think. Whereas with Ange, he's been getting paragraphs and paragraphs, and even squad players that he didn't necessarily play that much have been posting, like, thank you messages. And obviously, I know you got to be careful not to read too much into that at the end of the day, but um, I think clearly he did have the backing of the dressing room, and that's the key thing for me. I
yeah,
think if the players at the end of the season, despite winning, weren't happy with him, then, Levy, whoever's made that final decision, whether it's the new CEO with Levy, or whoever was involved, they'd have had much more of a leg to stand on if the squad were not happy. but it seems like they've actually just angered a dressing room that seemed to have built a togetherness, and that in itself is the risk with Thomas Frank, I think, even more so than the 13, 14 million essentially to bring him in. It is the fact that I think in a way you're sort of already starting on the back front because you've angered a dressing room that we're clearly still fully behind the last manager.
So obviously, yeah, looking likely now with, like we said, Thomas Frank to be the new manager next season. He's the favourites anyway as of right now. And for this context of this question, let's say he gets the job. Partly down to getting that much needed trophy was, of course, down to Ange, a large part of it, but the other part comes with this winning team. You know, that they're in this winning culture right now, and you know whether that culture kind of leaves or it stays is another question with Ange now leaving himself. But we'll get on to Daniel Levy in terms of relation to this question. But what needs to change for next season going forward? What does Thomas Frank need to do differently to just maintain everything forward to get to be a top six side without a doubt? To get that back to that kind of reputable status, but to also without a doubt fight for a trophy. But it seems the bare minimum now is to win one. It doesn't matter what one it is, but to at least win a trophy. What does he need to do?
I think the key thing would be, unlike Ange, would be the ability to adapt. I think this season, a key thing that I think coaches have even said, and fans have definitely said, and I've definitely said as well, would be at times this season we've been far too easy to play against. No matter who we're playing, we'd set up the same way. So I think Tottenham have been very easy to prepare to play against. No matter the injuries, like even when pretty much our full back five was out and, half our front line was out, no matter what, it would still be the same sort of kamikaze football and the high line. And the only real place where we saw that be any different was in the Europa League. And like, I feel like Ange probably learned a lesson there from the League Cup semi-final second leg against Liverpool. We went into it with a 1-0 lead, like just
Yeah.
obviously like lost 4-0, and honestly it was an embarrassing performance.
I remember
But
that night being like how poorly he did adapt. Yeah. That was the one
yeah,
thing that reeked out of that defeat.
yeah, honestly, yeah, it was almost like we didn't know that we were 1-0 up going into the game. But yeah, I think with Thomas Frank, that's the key thing. It's going to have to be that showing that ability to adapt, which at Brentford he's done. He's played several formations in his time there, and even when you look at stuff like with Tony leaving and then sort of elevating the games of Mbeumo and Vissa. Or even during that time when Tony had his gambling ban, and a lot of people thought, oh, like this could be the time like Brentford are going to really struggle. Like he has shown that ability to adapt.
Yeah.
So I think that's one key thing that he'll be judged on. In regards to like the cups, as you say, like Brentford have never really had cup runs with him in charge, or if they have, I apologise, but I don't remember any.
No, not neither
So
than I. To be
I,
fair.
I feel like that's gonna be really where he's judged. That I think, as you say, ideally, like the fans would like to win a trophy again next year, or at least be there or thereabouts, and carry on building on that. But the dressing room is clearly going to be the key one at the minute for the same reasons like that I spoke about previously, that the players do not seem to be happy that Ange is gone. I do think there's going to be a few players that definitely will leave, and I do think Romero is one of them, and I think that's going to be a huge miss. But then there's probably other players where they will be annoyed initially, but obviously, hopefully, Thomas Frank can come in and they end up really liking him and sort of believing in his way of doing things. So that'll probably be where he'll be judged. Will be, can he get those players on side? And as you say, can we compete on all fronts? Because in reality, to be a top team, you have to be competing in more than one competition. Which obviously we failed to do this year, and it was good because obviously we hadn't won one in so long.
Mm.
That's we were willing to make that sacrifice. But would Tottenham fans or would the club be happy next season or every other season if we were going to come 17th and win a cup at the end of it? Maybe not. I'd argue probably not if it was a season like that every year. But yeah, I think that's where he's going to be judged is winning the dressing room over and competing in more than one competition.
Yeah, yeah. Um, and with just because obviously it is about winning over the team with this new selection. Bringing in Thomas Frank is also about and that's obviously kind of that's all came from Daniel Levy's decision. Um, and it's all also obviously winning over the fans ultimately. With just having the faith. You sound faithful with it, and a lot of Tottenham fans, to be fair, from what I've seen, seem as well faithful. Obviously, that emotion is still hooked onto Ange, which 100% understandable, and but it does seem like this is a good choice. Without a doubt, what does kind of now from a owner's, from the owner, what does Daniel need to do to kind of make this a team to fight on all fronts, like you said, using them words? What obviously the main obvious one is being, financially back this team, obviously, but I mean, will that happen to the case of, you know, yeah, Ange could have been here for a third season, and just looking at how poorly he done in the Premier League, whether or not that was for the league for the Europa League run, um, would he have even inserted much money for Ange to work with in the first place? Does he even insert much money now for Thomas Frank, with this being his first season? It kind of goes in a patience process to see what a new manager establishes and does. Obviously, unlike the likes of Man United with Ruben Amorim, his first summer, Man United are just kind of, that is who they're trying to be. But do I guess the question is, do Tottenham kind of have to replicate what United do? Give him all that money. Obviously, there's that financial problem, but what else does Daniel Levy need to do to enable them to fight on all fronts?
As you say, it's what he should have done for the last 25 years.
Yeah,
He does need to, invest and properly invest in a team. To be honest, I think the whole Tottenham need to sell, like to buy thing in terms of, because it's Daniel Levy that it's come from, it's ENIC that it's come from. It's a complete myth. We're the ninth richest sports club in the world. Well, sorry, football club in the world. We're the second most profitable football club
yeah,
in the world in terms of and in terms of like PSR. I think we're something like we've got like 330 million in theory.
yeah.
Um,
I've never
Obviously we've never.
once heard Tottenham having an issue with it. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
they are really
so
good at
it
that.
it seems to me like obviously it's more from board level. That they don't want to spend, like, because ENIC, as you say, like maybe like the club might have lost 30 million in revenue this year. That bit might be true. But that's the problem is ENIC only spend money that is like gathered through the club. Like they never invest through their own pockets. Like Man United owners, I think Man United, they made a profit in the last quarter, but over the year they'd lost money.
Yeah,
But their new owners, Ineos, they're spending out of their pocket as well. It's not just doing what the Glazers did or what ENIC did, where you're using club resources all the time. It's actually putting in some of your money as an owner. And of course, Daniel Levy isn't the owner. He's just obviously the chairman and the man who's hired by ENIC to kind of run the club. So, potentially it's someone above him, which is why we're so limited. But like it is as simple as that. Like if we want to compete, you have to invest.
yeah,
And the point that I always look at, the manager who had us the closest to, competing on all fronts. Well, we did compete on all fronts, but we didn't, cross that line to win a trophy, was Mauricio Pochettino.
mm,
But when we finished second on 86 points, when Chelsea won it with Conte, um, we, instead of investing in that team, I still stand by it. At that time, we probably had the best 11 in the league, but our depth just was not there whatsoever. If Kane was injured, it was Janssen. If Son got injured, it was NG or
yeah,
Nkudu. It was a terrible bench, and we needed investment in that time. And then instead of investing, what they did was relied on the fact that they thought the players that we had would get even better, and we didn't sign a single player for 18 months. We At that time we
I
became the
remember.
first
Yeah,
Premier League team to not buy a single player over a summer, and then we didn't sign one until Lucas Moura in January 2018. So like it kind of just it epitomizes what Unique are like. That all they want for Tottenham is for us to be, they want us to be a top four team. Like that's it. As long as they're getting the profits from the Champions League money, that's what they want Tottenham to be. They don't care about investing that extra amount to, win a league or win these extra cups. And that's probably the frustrating thing as a fan. But if it is, or like, what do they need to do for us to invest on all fronts? Sorry, what do they need to do? It is as simple as that. They need to invest. Will it happen? No.
Yeah,
Truthfully, it's not going to happen. Like the players we bring in this summer will largely be either frees or players we can get for cheap or loans with options, or it'll be money that we generate from the, like, potentially, the sale of Romero, the sale of a Son, these type of players. So I think it's going to be a difficult job for Thomas Frank, if I'm being honest. I really like him as a coach, and if it goes right, I'm really excited for it. But if it doesn't go right, ultimately, I wouldn't necessarily say it's Thomas Frank that's the problem.
no,
It's been board level for a long time.
yeah. I think it, as sad as it is to say, even if that cup is there now, all eyes still go to, well, the board are still doing a lot of things wrong. And that is it. It just seems to be the sad reality about it. Yeah, we'll have to discuss it way more in another video. But thank you so much for coming on today, mate. Is there? I mean, I'll leave a link down below. But is there anything anyone can catch you on at all? Or
I do have a Twitter, as I say. I'll send you the link, and if anyone wants to drop me a follow, then yeah. But other than that, at the minute, as I say, I'm not too active otherwise. But thank you very much for having me on. And if you ever want me back on in the future, then I'm more than happy to
yeah,
speak football or Tottenham anytime.
without a doubt, mate. We'll have to go 12 months forward just to kind of react to Thomas Frank's season, what looks to be Thomas Frank's season, and perhaps a wise move from the owner to now transition to a new manager that isn't Ange Postecoglou. Or maybe he's got this wrong. Maybe the club needed Ange to continue that momentum that the Australian had started in the first place. It was always his project, and being impatient might be the factor that will cause Tottenham to reform back into their normal trophyless self, perhaps. If you would like to see more of these kind of style-based videos and what have you, then please do hit that subscribe button and like the video to show your support. This has been me, Rob from the Footy Agenda. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.